All right, guys. Well, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about what to mix first. When you start a live stream mix, when you start any kind of mix, what are you going to do first? Like, what's the first thing you should turn up? Should they all be up at the same time? Should you mix the kick by itself and then the snare by itself and so on? We've gone over this briefly in our live stream mixing course, which you can get if you work with us on building your template. But I wanted to go over it here as well and give you guys a little tip for free. So check this out. We have pulled up here, again, the Seven Hills Worship template, and we're in the process of this. This is not a finished mix. This is not how the template will end up looking, but we're in the process of creating it. If you remember from our last video, we have our AI Ozone 10 on here, which is sounding great, loving that. And here is how we started this mix. You can see here, we've still got some things muted. We've got utility tracks, we've got acoustic guitar muted, but what I want to do is take you back to when we very first started this mix. And here is what we had. We muted everything except for the vocals, the bass, and the drums. This is a nice place to start any mix. If you need to start with just drums by themselves, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I want to caution you against going kick by itself, snare by itself, toms by themselves, overheads by themselves. That's going to put you into what's called circle mixing. And what's going to happen is you're going to make an adjustment on the kick. Then you're going to bring the snare bottom in, which is going to have a little bit of the kick in it. And that's going to change the way that your kick sounds because there's a little kick in the snare bottom, unless you're 100% sampling, which I wouldn't recommend. And then you're going to bring in the toms, which also might have a little kick in them, and the overheads and the hi-hat, which are definitely going to have some kick in them. And by the time you get to the end, the kick sounds nothing like what you intended it to sound like because all of these other things have been added, and now the kick sounds completely different. So then you'll go back and make more changes on the kick, or you'll work on your overheads and your hi-hat, and you'll filter them way up so that there's no kick in them at all. And now everything's feeling thin. You took care of the kick problem, but now everything's thin and you don't know what to do, so you start beefing up your kick again to try and fill that space. You get my point. You're going to end up circle mixing yourself into a hole, and you're going to hate the way it sounds. And maybe you struggle with that, and maybe that's like you're crying on the other side of your computer right now because that's a sensitive topic for you. It is for a lot of people, and so I want to help you get past that and kind of clear the way for you to enjoy this process and get where you want to go quickly. So one thing to keep in mind is, you've heard it said a million times, I'm sure, if you've been on the internet looking at mixing stuff at all, but you're mixing a song, you're not mixing instruments. Now that said, everything is a spectrum in mixing. There is no right or wrong. There is no hard rule one way or the other. It is not better to start with vocals or better to start with kick or better to start with bass or all of them together. It's all about your workflow, how your mind operates, and putting systems in place to check yourself and make sure that you're staying objective. If there's one thing that's true, it's staying objective. And that's about the only, truth that there is in mixing. Everything else, you can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, though, if you can objectively decide, does this sound better than it did before, or cooler than it did before, or more natural than it did before, whatever the metric is that you use to judge how you're progressing through the mix, if you can keep that objectivity, then you're going to be light years ahead. Here is how I do it and what I've found works for me and works for a lot of your favorite mixers and a lot of the songs that you've listened to. So what I like to do is I like to start with my lower end instruments, dialing them in first. But that doesn't mean I'm going to solo my low end instruments, because as you know, low end without high end doesn't sound like much of anything at all. If you were to take a kick and you were to filter it down and take away all the transient, it's going to sound what you might call woofy or boomy, because there's no transient to give your ear something to latch onto. When we talk about punch or attack, it's usually the slap followed by a nice low-end bloom that gives us that chest-hitting feeling. And so if you want that, you have to have high-end in there. You can't ever just work on low-end. You have to work on the whole thing at the same time, because that's how people are going to hear it. And so you want to be making decisions based on that. Now again, that said, it's a spectrum. I also don't want to be hearing every single track at the exact same time because I'm a human and my brain can't comprehend that. If I'm hearing the tambourines and the acoustic guitars and the vocals and the cymbals, that's too much high-end information for me to be able to process. My ear might not be able to distinguish what high-end needs filtered. Is it the S's on the vocal? Is it the tambourine? Is it the acoustic guitars? Is it the cymbals? You may not know. So it is good to bring things in and layer as you go, but I would caution you against breaking that down too far. So here is a great place to start. I'm gonna play just the drums, the bass, and the vocal. What this is gonna do is it's gonna give us the drum set in its entirety. We're gonna hear the entire drum set. We're gonna hear the bass because the bass and the kick are gonna work together all the time. And those low-end frequencies are going to stack on top of each other to hit your limiter. So you're not going to have any idea where your gain staging is if you don't have your core low-end instruments in at the same time. You could push your kick up to where it's hitting the limiter, but then the minute that you add your bass, you're going to be way over because you're stacking those low-end frequencies and they're, you know, doubling up on each other. And the same thing could be true with some of your keys patches. You may want to bring those in as well, or your acoustic guitars. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to 90% of our low-end frequency combined with all of our drums, and I'm going to put the vocal in there so that I have a reference of depth. Otherwise, I'm not really going to know how loud, because if I just heard kick and bass and mixed that, I would end up mixing that so loud and so up front because I had no perception of depth of where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to put the vocal in for that reason also so that I can make sure my center doesn't get too cluttered and my snare doesn't take up too much of that space. I've also got my crowds in. That you do that or don't do it, doesn't really matter. I like having the crowds in. I'm going to turn them down a little bit. I am going to turn my effects sends off though. I don't want to hear those right now. Come on, let's sing. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Now, obviously, this mix is further along in the process than this, so that sounds pretty good. That's what we've done so far. Now, I want to bring in something else, maybe a melody instrument that's really core to this band. This band is pretty guitar heavy. They've got great keys too, but the guitars are what's going to be doing a lot of the interesting parts that could potentially compete with the vocals, so I want to bring that in because they're very important. Now, I like that. It sounds great. If I were using any plugin I wanted, I might put a little OTT on that guitar on the left here, but I'm going to listen to it in the mix. I'm going to listen to it soloed only so that I can hear exactly what OTT is doing, but then I'm going to dial in OTT with it unsoloed, so I'm not doing it by itself. So listening, what is OTT doing? Checking it on and off, okay. Definitely like 5. I hear a lot of sweetness in the guitar in the mid-range. I like that a lot. Okay, now let's dial it without it soloed, because I don't know if that's going to be the right move. Solo and unsolo it. Okay, I like what it was doing, but now it's a little bit loud, so I'm going to dial it down a little bit on the gain now that we've done the compression, and let's see what that sounds like. But we're going to do it listening to everything. Okay, now I'm going to just click and drag that over to the other guitar as well, just to see what that does. And we'll adjust it, but that'll be a good place to start. Come on, let's sing. Oh, come check yourself though. You want to make sure that every single move you're doing actually improved something. And it didn't just, you didn't just like it in solo, but it actually made the entire track feel good. And multiple times through the mix, I'll go back and I'll just mute like an entire plugin chain, just to see if I did the right thing, just to double check. Again, it's a spectrum. You want to be careful second guessing yourself. Usually your first intuition is better than your second, but there's no harm in refining. So I think we're going to leave it like that for now. Okay, let's bring our keys in now. So I soloed just so that I could train my ear just in that split second to the frequency of this so that I could then listen to it in the mix again. Because just, you know, unmuting it, my ear was having a hard time discerning what exactly those frequencies were. So we just learned really quick and then we back out. Tempted to put OTT on it again. I'm not going to though. We're not going to. It's an addictive plugin, guys. I tell you what, it's an addictive plugin. I just want it louder. I just want more keys. Now I'm going to snap this back using Alt-click to make sure I made the right move to see if 1 dB was enough. Yeah, that was better.
Come ye to Bethlehem.
Okay, I'm going to bring my tracks in. Let's bring the percussion track in. Those are getting in the way. I don't like that. That's too loud. So what we actually need to do is, since this is an LMC template, we need to have a gain on each of these. And we're going to set that at unity. Yeah, we're going to need to do quite a bit of work to get this in LMC format, which, if you guys know, LMC format is everything at -10. So we're going to have to pull that up to -10. That's actually pretty close. So we're going to do that on both of those. Then with the following plugins, which we're actually going to use a Q10 for, we're going to set this back to factory default. And then we're going to pull it down to be the correct volume in the song. And we would do that with all the rest of these tracks as well. But we're going to leave it like that for the video. Sounding good. Let's go ahead and bring in, do we have an acoustic? Not during this service, okay? Let's go ahead and start bringing in our verbs. Start with drums. Again, I'm unmuting these and they're basically mixed. So I'm not doing much because they just sound really great by themselves. That's a little messy. I don't like that at all. It's just too loud, I think. Let's pull it down up here. So you guys can see that as we bring things in one by one, we zoom in if we need to adjust something specific or just to get a better picture of what's going on. But then when we make the actual adjustment in the track, it's really important to make sure you're zoomed back out so that you're making it in the correct context. So there you go. That's a little tip for you guys on how to approach a track, how to start, maybe some things to think about before you get in. What are the core elements of this track? Obviously, the low end is going to be one of the first things that hits the limiter in a lot of modern music. Not in everything though. If you have an acoustic singer-songwriter track, the low end is really a non-issue. And in most songs, as counterintuitive as it may seem, if you get your mid-range right, your low end will fall into place. And your high end will also fall into place. There's not a ton of manipulating and mixing that you can do in low end without ruining it. There are some things, there are some tricks, and some guys are really good at it. I think Jason Joshua is a famous mix engineer who's very good at altering low end to fit his needs. But it can be very destructive to alter low end too much. A better approach might be to get your mid-range right, to hear things that are in the middle, that are taking up most of the space, because mid-range is most of the record. It's most of what you're going to hear. And then the low end kind of takes care of itself as long as it's good and clean and was recorded properly. Now, again, it's a spectrum. If you have a terrible sounding kick, terrible sounding bass, you're probably going to have to be a little more heavy-handed to get it in an acceptable place. But when you start a mix, think about what's the most important thing. Obviously vocals. Most of the time in worship music, it's going to be drums, bass, and then bring in one melody instrument so that you have context. And leave all the pads out. No one cares about the pads. All the atmospheric keys, leave it all out. That can all thicken the instruments that are taking up the interesting places. Most of the time, when we talk about pads or strings, especially in worship music, that is all there to bring an emotion and to bring kind of a fierceness to the sound. But when it really comes down to it, the drums, the bass, the vocal, and then the lead guitar lines, those are the parts that need to sound amazing by themselves. And then all that pads and reverb and stuff like that can come in later. And you'll find that you don't need as much of that if those core elements sound amazing by themselves. Like you just saw there, I had my reverb up way too loud. And once we had kind of dialed in some of the other things, there just wasn't as much space that we needed to fill. And a lot of times we use reverb or pads or textures just to fill space, which is a really, I don't want to say lazy, but it's maybe an improper way to look at what those things are truly for. We don't need to just fill space. If there's space in a track that needs filled, maybe we need better core sounds, or maybe we need better musicianship. But if you're having that desire to just fill space, try and resist that and try and get the things that matter to sound good. Then, of course, you always know when you've reached the end of that journey, you always have the pads, strings, reverbs that you can bring in just to top it off. But be careful relying on those as one of your core sounds in any song. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that this helps and gets you to sound better online at your church.